All right, what's up, everyone? It's Zach, and today I'm joined with an awesome guest, Parker Deal. Parker, how are you doing today?
Hello. I'm doing well.
Good, glad to hear it. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Awesome. So, Parker is a content creator posting on YouTube with the channel Fanatix Four video game content, and then also in the podcast world as well with Directly to You, another kind of gaming focused podcast.
hmm
But Parker, do you mind talking a little bit about your background, what you do, who you are, a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I could start in a number of different directions there, but yeah, I mean, as far as like just me, like snapshot of Parker right now. Um, yeah, like you said, I post videos on Fanatics 4. That's been fun. I've been doing that for about 2 years, and it's a pre-existing channel, so they were already doing stuff before. It's the way I got connected with them is well, them. It's really just me and this other guy, AJ, who it's his channel that I've joined. Um,
Right.
it was yeah, it was actually through the podcast first and foremost over there where I had a podcast going for about maybe like a little over a year or so with two friends of mine. That's like a music based podcast called Joyous
Right.
Eclectic. Um, and they yeah, and I'd asked AJ at some point if he'd be a guest on our podcast. So sort of like this, I guess, funnily enough. And he was like, yeah, sure, man, whatever. And then that just never happened. I just never got around to, actually asking him to officially come on. And they'd had the Fanatics 4 podcast, he and the prior guy, Logan. And then like it just kind of kept falling through where like Logan was busy or something and like the podcast just kind of wasn't happening. And so I messaged JJ and I was like, hey man, if you I don't know, like I'm happy to help do something if you'd like I can organize some stuff for you or whatever. And he was like, yeah, sure. If you could like plan to run a show for the podcast, then I can start getting guests on. And then if Logan's ever not able to join, you can join. And the first week that I did that, Logan couldn't join. And he's like, all right, Parker, come on. And so it just kind of snowballed from there. But it's been a fun ride doing content creation and stuff. But that's on that
Awesome.
front, that's kind of what that looks like.
Awesome. So it sounds like, within the next year, you and I are going to have like a YouTube
I'm
channel and a
pretty
podcast.
sure we will. That's the idea.
There we go. I love it.
Man,
Awesome.
yeah.
So with content creation, now I know you said like your previous podcast was music based and now it's more kind of gaming based. What has got you interested into those passions of yours?
Yeah, for sure. So, my just growing up I'm on the music front, that's a super
Yeah.
easy answer. Growing up, just music was a big part of our family. My mom's
Okay.
a piano teacher and a voice teacher. Um, and I think she and my dad both went to Bible college in Columbia, South Carolina, CIU, or yeah. And I think her minor was in like church music or something along those lines. But in any case, so
Okay.
my mom, music, all that. And my dad was the worship leader at a church and like youth pastor and stuff. So yeah, just kind of grew up with it. I remember being, uh, my mom taught something called kinder music, which I don't think there is very much of here in the States, but I was a missionary kid. So I was living
Okay.
overseas in France at the time. And
Oh, okay.
yeah, and so it's kinder music is this thing. It's pretty much like teaching music to little kids, like trying to get them involved with it early on, but in a way that their parents are involved too. So like their mom or dad would bring them, and then it's just like a bunch of music kind of activities or something, which is a fun way to kind of get like start very basic music theory at 2 years old.
Yeah.
It's just like I don't know, kind of weird, but yeah, that kind of just kind of got in my bones. Actually, do you play any music at all?
I do, yeah. I taught myself how to play the ukulele and guitar a few years back, so
Nice.
dabble in that a little bit. Very, very, very basic piano.
hmm
I'm trying to teach myself more of, and I just kind of got the bug with like electronic music production with like
hmm
MIDI keyboards and controllers, using that on like GarageBand and other
Yeah,
softwares.
that's awesome. What
Yeah.
kind of stuff do you listen to that also what kind of stuff are you interested in making? And I'm curious if those are the same thing or not, because sometimes that's not.
Right. Yeah. I love listening to all kinds of music. I'm not too picky. I I never say like I only like this genre or
Hmm.
that. I'm always open if someone's like, hey, this is a really cool band that I like. I'm always happy to give them a listen. So my music taste is all over the
I'll send
place.
you some Swedish progressive death metal to check out.
Please do. I will definitely check it out. That's awesome.
Continue.
In terms of like music myself, I think that that's again kind of one of those things where I'm pretty open to things. I kind of like the kind of like indie kind of folk vibe, but also I'm a real big fan of hip hop and rap, and
Hmm.
I write a lot of poetry. So I kind of think like poetry and spoken word poetry kind of has that rhythm and flow
Hmm.
that a lot of like hip hop has. So a good mix of a lot of different things.
Man, I'm jealous of you on that front because like I've written a good many songs in my day, but lyric writing is
Yes.
just not my any kind of a passion for me.
Okay.
Like so a lot of times like there's definitely some songs and it's more when I'm feeling like burdened in some way to that's very making it sound more serious than it is, but like if I'm feeling a strong emotion of some sort, it's maybe some
Hmm.
lyrics will kind of like pour out a little bit more easily. But otherwise, like a lot of times I'll write a riff or write some music or whatever and be
Yeah.
like, I guess I got to figure out some lyrics now because I don't want this to be instrumental. Or
Right.
so that's always a pain, is figuring that out. So I'm very jealous of of that being a natural talent and passion of yours. Yeah, and that's fun to bring it the other way around, because yeah, again, I'm always writing music first and then putting lyrics to it
Yeah.
like 90% of the time. Yeah, so what's that looked like so far in writing music at all, or
Yeah, so it's funny that you said that, Parker, because I'm the complete opposite of you,
yeah.
where I have only ever written lyrics, and then like I was like, okay, I should probably learn this whole like music thing. Um, I in middle school I played in the band and everything,
Hmm.
so like there's a little music theory knowledge, but
What'd you play in
to
the
be honest,
band?
it's right.
What'd you play in the
I
band? I
played
gotta know.
I played the alto saxophone.
Hey, I played alto sax too. Look at
There
that.
we
Yeah.
go. That's awesome. So did that for a couple of
Hmm.
years, and like I mean that was what, oh my God, I don't even know how long ago that was. Like 10. I'm 25
It was
now.
57 years
So
ago. We know.
yes,
You're living a
57 years.
lie.
Exactly. But it was forever ago. So yeah, I didn't really have that like knowledge to write music.
Hmm.
Um, so that's kind of what made me want to get into instruments and learn more of that. And then with the music production side of like electronic music and stuff, I was like, I can just plug in something to my computer and like make it sound like a guitar. So that's a lot easier to maneuver for me. So in terms of actual writing music, I would say that's still pretty fresh
Hmm.
and on the up and up. But lyrically, I've been writing, forever. And even like before I understood music and what goes into it, it would even just be like finding a song that I really like and just using that like
Hmm.
that music to like rewrite a song or rewrite verses and keep the chorus. But it's just been something it's really been therapeutic for me. It's been a way to express myself or to, you know, just enjoy and get lost in something creative.
Yeah. No, I feel you there. And again, it's funny because yeah, I have the exact same experience, but the
Yeah.
other way around, where like
Right.
I remember several times in college, especially when, man, I mean, you're doing master stuff now, so I'm sure that's way more busy. But like my college years specifically, I remember
Hmm.
feeling like, man, I was busy. But then I think back, I'm like, no, man, I had so much free time, and like I chose to do some activities for sure that made me a little more busy. Then again, I mean, there's
Right.
an aspect of that in all of life. Like at this point, technically
Yeah.
speaking, doing Fanatix Four stuff takes up a lot of my time, but like it's also
Right.
kind of optional. Technically, like I could not do it
Yeah.
and still I have a day job, and that's whatever. But I definitely remember a lot of times of just like sitting down playing guitar and just like almost falling asleep on my guitar just because it's just relaxing and fun
Right.
to play. But well, I'd love to hear some of what you got in the future. I mean,
Yeah.
not the offline of here, obviously, because we're doing other things now. Come on,
For
but yeah,
sure.
that'd be fun.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, hey, if we don't start a podcast or a YouTube channel, we'll start like a band or
Exactly.
just like
So many projects
music,
getting
like
started.
make songs. Like, yeah, this is the start of a great working relationship.
Exactly, man. But yeah, so that was some of music for me. Was
Yeah.
fun. My first actual instrument that I played, I was 7, and my mom, like I said, was a piano teacher, and she had a recital for her students that was with another teacher who was a flute teacher, and so it was like half piano students, half flute students. And I remember like telling people that flute was my first instrument, and they were like, "Oh, your mom must have forced you to play that or something." And I was like, "No, literally, I went to that recital that had both, and I turned to my mom halfway through and I was like, Mom, I gotta play that instrument." Which like seems so weird of a 7-year-old boy to say about a flute. Like, I don't know why, but I was like, yeah, man, I'm into it. And me and my friend Matthew Boswell, we had lessons together, which was interesting. We had like the same teacher, same lesson at the same time, like co-lessons, which I think for a lot of people maybe would be not ideal, but something about that for me, like I thrive in collaboration, I think, which is with especially because I'm bad at holding myself to like deadlines and stuff like that if I don't have somebody else kind of, you know, walking alongside me, and me feeling like I have to do it for somebody else. So that was a cool like way to start, where like music is doing stuff with other people, and that's like kind of how it's been for most of my life since then. But yeah, so that's how the music thing came about. I mean, there's a lot more to it than that because I have a whole life, but you know,
it's a little basic kind of cliff notes,
exactly, right?
Okay, awesome. And how about like the gaming side? Where did that kind of passion start and come from?
So yeah, I also 7. Man, 7 was a big year for me.
I guess so.
Like I said, we were living in France, but every other summer we come back to the States because I was born in, cliff notes of that. I was born in Virginia. We moved to France when I was like 1, little under 1. And we were there for about 10 years. And then later moved to Belgium, and we were there for about 6 years. But you know, America was quote unquote home. That's a lot more complicated subject just in terms of like, do you know the term third culture kid? Is that familiar to you at all?
Vaguely.
Okay. Yeah, it's something that I definitely don't run into very often here in the States, but that was like a huge part of me growing up was this concept of being a third culture kid, which is that your parents are from one place, you live, or your parents have one culture, you live in another culture. And so you kind of develop a third in between, like an A plus B equals C sort of thing, to where like the States never quite felt like home to me. And like, I had more culture shock going back to America, even though I was American. But yeah, we came back to the States for one summer when I was 7, and Pokemon was on the TV. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but it's cool and I like it. And so my mom that whole summer would be like, "You gonna go watch your Japanese show?" Even though it was in English, like it wasn't in Japanese. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, it must have been in English. But you know, it was like anime. So as far as she was concerned. And after that, I think I got a Game Boy for my birthday that year and started playing Pokemon. And that's just like kind of what started it. But honestly, I played games a decent amount from the age of 7-ish to about 10, and then when we did move back to the States when I was 10, my parents were like, "We're going to be moving back to Europe soon enough, so we're not going to get," like, GameCube had just come out, and I really, really wanted one. They were like, "We're not going to get a GameCube because it's not going to work when we go back overseas, so let's just not get it." So I kind of stopped playing games for a really long time. Like, I played a little bit here and there, but then 2017 rolled around, the Nintendo Switch came out, and here we are. It sucked me back in. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, I know from like watching your content on Fanatix Four and everything, you've talked about how you're into video games and kind of fell out of it, and then you got roped back in, and I think that's a really interesting perspective, because I think like with a lot of people that are in the gaming space are really, passionate about it, whether they're creating content or not. It's like that love's been a continuous thing, and they've been, through every generation. So it's cool to kind of see someone with a perspective of like, this is what I grew up on. And then I jumped like, 4 generations, and here we are at the future.
Yeah. It definitely, like, there's an element of imposter syndrome there of like, not much, but especially because I'm, vocal enough about it. Like when it comes up, I'm happy to say like, yeah, I mean, I totally missed a whole number of years. But there's, when people are like, yeah, like people who have been in the gaming space for a long time, they're like, oh, I've never played a Metal Gear game, and that's the only franchise. I'm like, I have never played so many things, like even plenty of Nintendo things, which is like the focus. Like, yep, never played, I don't know, a bunch of stuff.
Right. So like when it comes to content creation and like the YouTube channel, there's definitely, I'm sure, been plenty of times where you're maybe talking about a franchise or a game that you have no experience playing. Like, is that just like I have to do a lot of research beforehand, or do you try to like play a quick demo or something?
That's a great question. Yeah, I think it's a whole mixture of stuff, like some research for sure, and then also there's a decent amount of just like having been around and very involved for the past 4 years. I've kind of just like gathered a lot of information on certain franchises, even that I don't know stuff about, and like what I know I think sounds good or sounds bad about them too. But then other than that, some of it is just like purely subjective. Here's what I think, I would like from this, or even like, this is what I think just other people might like from this, kind of irrespective of the source material in some regards. Like I know AJ and I talk about Star Fox every once in a while, and we were just talking about it on the podcast yesterday again. But same kind of thing, where like that one, it's a fairly notorious example for us of like something where like, honestly, we just kind of need to throw out the baby with the bathwater. Is that a phrase? I think it is.
I think it is.
So, but like, kind of start from scratch essentially, and like make it for a modern audience instead. So even though I've barely played any Star Fox, like I probably played 15 minutes of Star Fox 64, an hour or two of Star Fox Adventure, and that's probably it. Like, but even with that, like just knowing, like, I don't know what things do well on specifically the Switch to today's audiences and stuff. What directions to go in. But also it's like, it's content at the end of the day. So as long as it's entertaining, that's probably the most important part, as long as people are having a good time watching it. Cause that's like, I could be accurate till the cows come home. Man, that's 2 phrases already that I have never used before. You're getting a lot out of me, Zach.
I am.
But yeah, I could be like super accurate about something, but if it's not enjoyable for people to watch, then, I mean, there's a different, I don't mean like lying, but I just mean in terms of like predicting things accurately or something like that versus, saying stuff that sounds fun, but may never come to fruition, but is, entertaining.
Right. Definitely. And I mean, I think that something cool about what you and AJ do is, you have very entertaining content, but then you always are encouraging discussion, people to say what their thoughts are or to give their opinions. And then I know both of you do a great job, addressing it in future videos or the podcast or engaging on social media and saying like, you agree or disagree, just having that like fun, healthy conversation about what everyone else thinks, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things for sure that before doing stuff with Fanatix Four, I appreciated the most was that I'd leave comments on the videos about thoughts that I had on something or other. And then, here talked about in the podcast, and just being a part of that conversation, even if not like, I mean, pretty directly, I guess, if being the, at least a catalyst for it was, felt both fun, just like, my words are being on a podcast. That's neat. That side, but then also just like a little bit of validation of like, okay, people have good ideas, like even somebody like me has good ideas about stuff, and other people seem to think so. And that's fun. So that's, I think, something that we like to carry on. I don't know.
Definitely. It's awesome that you guys do, for sure. When it comes to like the content creation, Parker, like I know that I don't remember specifically when, but one of your more recent videos, probably within the last couple of months, I'm pretty sure you said like you just kind of went off the cusp, where normally you're, preparing and planning and maybe scripting things out. How much, for those that might not be involved with any type of content creation, how much time or work does go into, each video that you post?
That, man, such a good question. And I think like answering even broader than myself, it's such a range. And it's funny because it might not always, like, I think the most time consuming stuff may not always be the most obvious stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, and like the way I've been doing videos recently, I've kind of just, everything's been really busy. Like we're adopting pretty soon, which is great. And I'm happy to talk more about that in a little bit, but like, that's, taking up a lot of time. So yeah, for me right now, the process a lot of times is my video goes up on Thursdays, and I've got kind of a backlog of some ideas of videos that I'd like to make, but I kind of save the deciding on what it is until the day before, Wednesday, when I, just in case something like this week, I talked about Nintendo being at E3 this year, which is very fun. But yeah, we didn't get that news until late Tuesday or early Wednesday or something like that. So, the video I was going to make, I just ended up not making. So on Wednesday, get off work at like 3-ish. And there was a time when work was really slow, which was great. And I could just like script during the day, kind of between work tasks. And that has not been the case recently. So I got to get off work, script for, I don't know, probably a total of 3 hours or so, which sounds like a lot. It doesn't feel like quite that much a lot of times, and sometimes it does. But yeah, so that involves some research sometimes. But a lot of the topics that I do, I try to do stuff that I can write, like speak more, kind of just write about and just know what I want to say and not really do bullet point outlines or anything like that. But then there are some times where I'll, just have bullet points, especially if it's more like a list of ideas or something. But I find that I'm not great at improvising my thoughts like I want them to turn out on video. Somehow on podcast, it's fine. I don't know why. Maybe it's just a mental block. But and then so script it, record the video and audio at the same time, edit those together, and then go in and edit the video. And that takes the recording the video part takes probably a little under an hour most of the time, and then editing it takes anywhere from like 3 for a quick video, 3 hours, to maybe like 5 or 6 hours for a longer video.
Okay.
But I don't know. That feels like there's a range there for sure. But the thing that I'll say that I feel like is interesting is like, have you seen any Scott the Woz videos, for example? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
There's things in his videos, especially, that I'll notice that I realize, as somebody who makes videos and thinks about little gags, sometimes take way longer than like it seems like if he has some sentence where he's like talking about whatever, and then it's a quick cutaway clip. In some video he made recently, he was talking something about something drowning something, and then has a quick cutaway clip of like him pulling his head out of the bathtub, or something like that. It looked like he was drowning in the bathtub, and he pulled his head out. That tiny little clip that lasted all of 1 second took at least 30 minutes to go in there, get the camera set up, get the angle right, and do it, and maybe do it a couple of times. Maybe not 30 minutes, but at least a little while that is super interrupts the flow of making things. Right. So there's those kinds of things that I always think are really interesting, watching other videos and thinking now about oh man, that took some time. So it's funny doing that, but that's essentially the process, for me at least.
Okay, that's awesome. And I mean, that's a great point that you just brought up, Parker. I didn't really ever think about, when people do those kind of cutaway clips or just side skits during a video, that probably disrupts the complete flow and is also its own process and takes a lot of time for 5 seconds.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, it's fun things like that. And I think probably, as you keep writing more music and stuff like that too, or now, doing podcasts, there's all those creative things. You gain a different kind of appreciation, I think, for, listening, when I listen to music, there's things that I'll pick up on now that I just wouldn't have picked up on before, because like I just never interfaced with it in a certain way. And then now I hear, certain like the better I get at drums, the more I pick up interesting drum things that people are doing, like those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, it's like you kind of become almost an expert, or you're on the pursuit of being an expert in something, so you're easily able to pick up on different minute things that other people are doing in that same field or profession.
And similarly, like I bet with poetry, that's a thing where like
Yeah.
I remember having to study some poetry in high school, and it just kind of going over my head as far as like the complexity of some of it and stuff, where I'm just like, I don't know, it's a bunch of words, not to diminish it in any way, but that's, like coming at it. Yeah. And then, and then the teacher will point out all this interesting stuff that's going on. I'm like, okay, that is pretty cool though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, something that I just, I'm personally passionate about is just the idea of, mental health and taking care of ourselves. And as someone, in your position where you're posting content regularly, does, people talk about how social media can have a negative impact on just, mood and, how we're feeling, and even like self-worth at times. Like when it comes to posting, your video every week, do you ever get concerned with like, how many views did it get, or like how many likes is it getting? Like, does that affect you, or are you kind of just like, I'm doing what I enjoy, like people will love it, some people won't, that's okay?
Man, that's a good question. I wish that my answer was different than the one that it is, which I'm sure shows my hand. Yeah, it's something that like I don't care about in the grand scheme, but there is investment reward kind of, or return on investment, that kind of no. None of those are the right phrase, but there is a sense to which, like, if I work hard on a video and then post it, and then YouTube will show you how it compares within the last 10 videos that you made as like kind of a metric right on the front page. And and that's definitely something that's just like, it's a little discouraging if I make a video and it's like, well, I thought this one was particularly good, and this one is 9 out of 10 on the, on this scale.
Right.
And I think something I'm learning with that too is that also what that says right at the beginning isn't always the case in the long run. So like there's some videos that, especially ones that are more topical, will could maybe be, in the top 1, 2, 3, whatever, but then they'll die out pretty fast. Whereas then there's other ones that, I remember last year, I went to PAX East with AJ, and which is a video game conference. It was literally like a week or two before COVID stuff really hit, and which was it was just funny because it was in Boston, and we had heard about a singular case in Boston, and Ashley was like, my wife was like, be careful, like don't get COVID from that one guy, which is just funny to think now. But like, yeah, I mean, that was, it was a real thing. There probably were way more than one cases at that point. We just didn't know it.
Right.
But I remember we went there, and I just put up a video that I thought was pretty good about a potential 3D Donkey Kong game. And then it went up and had pretty bad views right at the beginning. But then I looked back recently, and it's just like very slowly but steadily been climbing up, and now it's got like an average video of ours will have somewhere probably within like 2,000 views, or up to 2,000 to 4,000 views, something like that. And this one has 30,000 now. Just like it's just been gaining some views. So that's something I think I have to have a bit more of a long-term perspective in that front.
Yeah.
As far as the like the mental health side of it, that's something that gets me a little bit, but I also don't feel like I particularly obsess over, other than just I notice and wish I didn't notice. But I am thankful that our community is small enough still right now that there's not really any obvious trolls in there or anything. And so like and also just because we interact more often with the folks that watch our video to where even if we get negative comments, like they can roll off my back pretty easily. Because like, and usually that's a thing where like, 99 nice comments and one mean one, the one mean one's the one that sticks out. And like, sure, if it's something that like really kind of gets under my skin, then I'm sure it could. And those are fewer and further between. But
right.
But I think just the fact that I know that like I've got names and faces, or at least icons of people that are like, I know that they think that this is good. So I'm making this for, for Zach or for Pat Green or for Grimhane or whatever, like for specific people that I know are appreciating it. So like if some other people don't, that's okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, I think that's a great perspective. And that's, anything that I've done in my life that's been creative, that was kind of my perspective. Like, if one person benefits from this, or it makes them happy, or they learn something, like, that's fine. Like, 1,000 people could hate on it and think it's the stupidest thing I've ever done. But if like one person enjoys it, like that feels fulfilling enough for me.
No, for sure. The second song I ever wrote that I claim is the first song I ever wrote. So quote unquote, the first song I ever wrote, back in like 7th grade, was a song called Goodbye Isn't Forever. And it was about, a girl, just a friend in like my friend group in 7th grade who was moving away. And it was like, Goodbye Isn't Forever. And it was very cheesy. But some friend of mine, like several years later, got that tattooed on her back with a little flower. And she, partly for the song, mostly for the sentiment, just because like, again, we were, especially by that time when I was in Belgium, the school I went to was an international school, and they were just in Brussels in general. Like it's a very, it's where like the European Union is there as the capital Brussels. It's like a lot of people are kind of in and out. It's very migratory. So think that was just a thing for this friend of mine that like, goodbye isn't forever. Like a lot of people are going to come and go in my life, and that's fine. But I remember definitely feeling that and being like, oh, I wrote those words and she got them tattooed. And like that, that's cool. Just like something that like impacted a person, something that I did. And that's, a rewarding feeling. It's easy to forget those, I think, in the moment, but then having those as kind of little, anchors along the way, is nice. Little Ebenezer stones.
Definitely. And I think, definitely. Yeah. And I think, sometimes we get so caught up in like the right now, like how a video is performing, or, what the feedback is right now, that like sometimes we miss that kind of future implications that it could have, or, how it could impact someone down the road, or even just like how we can have impacts on people that we don't ever really know about, like with the past year, how it's been for everyone. I'm sure there's countless people that have tuned into, Fanatix Four, watched a video, and, during a tough time, during, maybe tough things they're going through, it made them smile, or it made them laugh, or excited for a new game coming out or something. So it's like, even though you might not ever hear those stories, I know there's plenty of them out there.
That's encouraging. Yeah, thanks, Zach.
Yeah, of course. And I'll be the first to say, I'm one of those, people where in a crazy year, it's been a lot of ups and downs, just like everyone else. I've been able to, watch your guys' content and be like, okay, that's cool. Like, even if I'm just like, zoning out of the real world for 10 minutes, it's like that's a cool like little escape.
No, I feel you. That's because I similarly, I've definitely got stuff like that I'm on the receiving end of, and that's but I don't always do anything about it myself. And like, even though I know that like, oh, it'd be nice if I left a comment or did a something or other for them to experience that, but I think that's a good reminder to me to make sure to do that. And it's funny to see how like, some, I can't remember specific examples, but I feel like I've got, I do remember specific examples. A couple games recently that I played, like review copies of or something like that. Usually the way that works is there's developers for a game, and then there's a publisher for the game. And so I'll be interacting with the publisher on getting the copy of the game, but won't necessarily interact with the developer. So on a couple occasions recently, I played a game and was like, man, this is really good. Like, I can tell a lot of love went into this, and awesome, whatever. And so then made sure to like actually message the developer themselves, who like I'm sure doesn't get that many, like specific, like, hey, by the way, you did a great job on this. And that was nice. And like, I could tell that it was appreciated and like didn't happen that often, which is like, man, that kind of sucks that it doesn't happen that often. But like, knowing the messages that I've got from specific people where they're like, hey, I really appreciate that you're doing something with, ideally with a good heart, and that's, so that's the, it's a good reminder for me to do more of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, for sure. So, I know as weird as it is, it's almost middle of April, so the year 2021 is already kind of full in effect, and it's still a kind of crazy time that we're in. But what is your 2021 or just future look like? In terms of goals, or you have a lot going on in life, personally and kind of like professionally with your passions and stuff too. Like, what's any future goals? Or you mentioned
right, yep,
you're adopting soon. I know that's gonna change a lot in very positive ways. So what are you kind of thinking for the next year, couple of years?
I do need to think a bit better about like creative goals, that kind of thing, because that's something that I kind of, for the most part, just kind of let happen as they happen, kind of to a detriment. So that's something where I don't have much of an answer on that, although I kind of wish that I did. For the reasons, especially that I said before, that like I'm bad at holding myself to specific things, but like that's why like I would never have started, I don't think, a YouTube channel or continued a YouTube channel at like I could do exactly the same videos as I do for Fanatix Four on a separate channel, and it just wouldn't have happened because I didn't have AJ, just somebody else there, kind of, that like if I ever have to tell AJ like, hey, by the way, I'm not going to post like my video is not going to be ready, I've got to put it the next day, he'll be like, all right, cool, that's fine, whatever. So like kind of, or even if I'm like, hey, I can't do one this week, then he's like, okay, cool, I'll do one, or there just won't be a second video, that's fine. So like technically, there's nothing super holding me to that, but I feel like there's somebody I'm being held accountable. And so in music especially, I'd like to place that in my life in some way, certain kinds of accountability, so that I can have more goals. So that's kind of the music question. Some ideas I have there, just as snapshots for if anybody cares at all. I would love for these things to happen. I have a metal band that me and my friend James back in, it was our band in high school, and then we kind of haven't done much since then. He's been doing tons of stuff separately, in other bands and all that. But I've had an idea for an album for a really long time to do with him, but it just hasn't happened. Neither of us are good at making that happen. So that's one thing. Otherwise, I have one solo record that's on Spotify and all that, and it's kind of like a little bit folky. And I've got a ton more songs that I've written, but just haven't like put in the time to finish up. And then I have a ton of other just like random songs that I would need to figure out what to do with. And then otherwise, something that I started a little bit last year, but I'd meant to start way longer ago than that, was a video series that I'd like to do called Drum Up, that takes songs that just don't have drums in them, but like would be cool if they had drums in them, and then do essentially drum covers of them. Or essentially it's just like, I'm adding drums to this song, sorry about it. And so I did that with just like two songs, one from both, which were video game songs in this case, one from Mario Odyssey, one from Breath of the Wild, last year. But I'd love to do it more with those. And also, like, I don't know if you listen to like Punch Brothers or Nickel Creek at all, but they have really good songs for that kind of thing. There's a bunch of others. Okay. So that's that. Adoption. That's the other big answer that actually, has some concrete stuff there. So my wife and I have been in the process since about November of 2019 is when we decided that we were going to adopt. And she's been super passionate about adoption since she was a kid. Like as 7 years old or whatever, she told her parents, like, I want a baby brother for Christmas. Like, I don't know what it was, but she must have seen something, like there's some international adoption thing happened, I guess. And she was like, that should be my family. So yeah, when we started dating, she was like, hey, I'd like to adopt one day. And I was like, oh, I never even thought about that. I guess. And then kind of, it was just in the background for a long time, but then going to church, November 2019, I think Orphan Sunday is sometime in November. And so every year we do something cause I mean, as a Christian, there's a lot about adoption that's also tied to faith and kind of a picture of being adopted into, the family of God and that kind of stuff is there's some similarities there. So it especially is a big part of our church, and one of our two teaching pastors at our church adopted. And so it's just there's a community of folks that have adopted or are adopted at our church, which has been really encouraging. And so it was Adoption Sunday, and somehow, I don't know if we've been talking about kids or something just a little bit before then, but as I walked in the church, grabbed the pamphlet or whatever for the day, and not pamphlet, what's the word for those? I don't know. It's a little piece of paper that says what's going on today. The program maybe. And I grabbed that and saw that it was Orphan Sunday or Mercy Found Sunday or whatever. And I was like, well, today's the day. This is what's happening. And then after the service, we sat down and at lunch, and Ashley turned to me and she was like, so we should talk about something. And I know what you're probably going to say. But especially after today, I think we need to talk about adoption again. And I was like, well, I think you don't know what I'm going to say then, because I'm totally with you. So, so it's been a journey, for this past while, but, it's domestic infant adoption. For anybody who's watched Friends, for example, this is Monica and Chandler, it is a good example of what that is. So basically it's a birth mom who, doesn't want to keep the baby. And, so we're going to adopt her. And, she's due early mid-May, although this isn't the birth mom's first child, and she's been early in the past, so it's very possible. We're literally at this point, we're sleeping with our ringers on, because it could be we could stop this podcast now because I get a call, kind of a thing.
Right.
So so that's, well, actually, by the time people listen to this, it may have already been past May, and maybe we already are down in Florida with our baby now. Who's to say? But so that's the long and short of that. It's been a journey, and just trusting God through every step, and lots of things where I'm well, I truly don't know how this part of this is going to work out, and how God's going to provide for this or whatever. And then he does. And always, I think a good lesson in faith in all of this has been that a lot of things, especially the financial side, because adoption is just really expensive. Because legal fees and all that stuff. There's pretty much at every step of the way, cost wise, especially, I would hear a different factor about cost or something like that. And it would always be just barely more than I could have any realm of comprehension of doing on my own. There was, so the first number that we ever heard was adoptions, something, $18,000 was a number that I heard. And I remember being oh man, I could maybe envision figuring out, scrounging something, $12,000 or $15,000, but $18,000, that's out of my ballpark. And then at some point, my mind kind of came around to that, and I was I don't know, I could see God doing that. I could, whatever, no big deal. And then had another conversation. Someone was actually, it's more like 25,000. I'm oh man, no, that's too much. And then that kept happening. And spoiler alert, it was more than that. That was realistically, it's more like $35,000 to $45,000, which is like really insane. But I mean, it's a lot of like just straight up, just God provided in a lot of ways, and like through people, through just like unforeseen circumstances and stuff. So it's been a good lesson in faith.
That's good. And, I just think that, it's awesome to kind of hear this story and just, see what's on the horizon for you and your wife, and just, future family. And I think that, just knowing how strong your faith is, and kind of just your ability to believe like things are going to work out, that's going to be what's going to get me through, any challenges or obstacles along the way. I think that just, like you said, it's a good lesson in faith, and, trusting that things will work out how they're supposed to be.
Yeah. So that's exciting. We just organized her room a little bit last night. We got a baby shower tomorrow. That's outside because COVID. Right. Yeah, just a lot of good stuff. What about you? What's this year looking like for you?
Yeah, good question. So wrapping up my first year of my master's. It's a 2-year program, so that's like 3 more weeks that I have left of that, and then I'll be working over the summer doing an internship, and just trying to, in any free time I have, do creative endeavors, whether it's things with this podcast or music or writing. I like photography, so really anything that is creative. I like it. I mean, I've even thought about YouTube. So maybe I'll dive into that world, and more of like the video side rather than just like audio. But yeah, anything that I can do to just be creative, and spend time with loved ones, friends, family, and support friends, family, and be helpful and be of service to others. That's what I really find fulfilling and enjoying in my life. So just continue to do that and be the best I can every day, for myself and for everyone else.
Sure. Is your family pretty close by where you're at now?
Yeah. So I, with COVID and everything, I went from living by my school, or living at my school, to coming back home to spend some time with family. So yeah, just spend with my family. Nice. We're all in the same area, and just kind of living where I grew up, while I go through this time in school. And then once that ends, kind of that's when the next chapter of life happens. And it's like, all right, where do I want to end up? Where do I want to live? What's the future look like?
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. And, thank you again for stopping by today and talking. There's been so much variety that we've talked about that's been really awesome to hear about, and, just to learn kind of your perspective on different things that you currently do or have experienced in your life.
It was my pleasure entirely, and will continue to be the next time I don't know if that's even a thing, but that's it. Yeah. If you ever, I'm happy to talk whenever, just because it's a good time talking to good people, and that's fine.
I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot to Parker deal, so we might definitely have to have a part 2, or, maybe future Parker pops in and tells us some updates about like the adoption process, how that's going, and all that good stuff. But, in the meantime, Parker, we talked about Fanatix Four, and directly to you, where can people kind of follow or, come chat with you at?
I'm like if chatting is the desire, then Twitter is probably the best place. Twitter is at Parker Deal. And then, but yeah, if you want to watch some Nintendo type videos, youtube.com/Fanatix4, Fanatix with an X, because it's edgy like that. And the podcast is linked on there as well. Like, honestly, if you find my Twitter, everything else is kind of like pretty easy to find from there. And then, I've got some music stuff on Spotify, but it's all pretty old. It's just, if people feel like listening to it, feel free. Luckily, I'm one of very few Parker Deals, so it's pretty easy to find me amidst the rest of the internet. It is. It's great,
honestly. That's awesome. Perfect. So yeah, go look up Parker Deal, Spotify, Twitter, and chat with him. He's an awesome guy, and I'm sure he'd be more than happy to engage in.
Engaging in conversations? Oh, I'm not going to do that.
Oh man, and that's another thing I love about Parker, just the sense of humor and just the joy for life. I mean, you can feel it, and I hope everyone can feel it through these conversations. So yeah, go find Parker, Fanatix Four on YouTube. Parker and AJ do a great job with their videos, and it's every Tuesday, Thursday, right? That videos go out, and then Parker specifically, you're on Thursdays. Perfect. So yeah, I'll put all that in like the description, but Fanatix Four with an X because it's edgy. You heard it here first. And Parker Deal
there you go.
on everything else. So yeah, I guess before we end it out officially, is there any last words, message that you have or want to share?
I can't believe we never got to talk about the Crusades.
I know. I really was. I had that in the back of my mind the whole time. I was like, how do I put this in organically?
That's how you do it. Just very inorganically, right at the end. Yeah. Of course.
Yeah, the Crusades, about those.
There you
That'll
go.
be episode 2. This is like the teaser, right? For the follow-up podcast is just an hour.
And literally it'll be me being like, I mean, I researched it a bit. I've heard of them. I know like 3 things, and that's it. That's like,
right.
That's it.
Well, that'll be the next like research project for you. Like, just like you're doing a video, like I'll be like, Parker, here's the day, Crusades is the topic. Let's come with arguments and just debate back and forth.
Good deal. Thanks so much for having me, Zach. It's been quite a pleasure.
Of course. Yes, thank you so much, Parker. It's been a pleasure. It's so great to talk to you and spend the time. And I just thank you and wish you the best of luck personally and with the adoption, with just kind of the family that you're starting. I think is amazing. So best of luck there, and of course, continued success with all your creative endeavors as well.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Of course.